existence of that image.
Correct, and that applies, I think, to most artifacts. We're, through our certification and our training, we're taught to trust but verify. Okay? The tools are only presenting that data in a way for a human being to interpret. And as a forensics investigator, my job is not to just look at something and accept that. My job is to look at that, see if it is supported by where it is, by another artifact or some other corroborating evidence that would indicate how that picture became on this device. Just simply because it's there is not valid or not enough to come to a conclusion.
So what I guess is the first thing you look at regarding an image to try and determine the location of that image on the phone?
So what we were always again taught is that the image is one artifact, yet that artifact can have additional information. That's typically referred to as some type of metadata or even another artifact of an artifact, right? So there could be dates, there could be a source file or a source location. It could be also the type of file, could be different times. There could be internal metadata dates, there could be external file dates. All of these things are presented to you as an examiner through the forensics tools.
Okay, so I think this has all been a little abstract, so I want to sort of get into the actual application in this case. Could you pull up the tagged items report?
Okay.
Can you explain what's on the screen here?
Certainly. So as I mentioned regarding Celebrate, and they have the tool Physical Analyzer. The Physical Analyzer tool is the full tool that Celebrate gives to the examiners who have hold a license. So in order to use Physical Analyzer, you have to have a current license that you're registered for and can be trained on and accepted. This is considered a Celebrate reader report. Now, a reader report is nothing more than data that is derived from information that was decoded in Physical Analyzer. And that report can then be derived or created many different ways. Not only different formats, it could be what's called a Celebrate reader. I could have created one in a Adobe PDF. I could create one in Word, Excel. All of these functions are available. However, this particular one, and why it's called a tag report, is it's filtered. So this would be the result of a person looking at the data that's decoded from Physical Analyzer and tagging or hitting on little buttons, typically a function key, and you can tag an item and say, oh, that picture is relevant to X, so I will tag it. When that's done, you can then produce a report, and Celebrate has an option that says just produce a report of tagged items. That's what we are looking at right now. So a filtered version of what was looked at on the full Celebrate Physical Analyzer down to a reader report that somebody else can use. And the one thing that's important is the reader does not require a license. So that's usually what gets turned over to the non-licensed holders of Celebrate.
And what is your understanding of how this filtered report we're looking at came to be?
It has a little bit of information in it too. As we can see, there was a Detective Knox, and even reading through transcripts that I was also provided, I'm aware that Detective Knox reprocessed an original extraction, which would have meant he used Physical Analyzer to reprocess the original extraction, or second extraction, I'm sorry, and then through Physical Analyzer, then tagged items, and then created this report to True.
Okay. And so then in the lower right-hand corner, is that the categorizations of the various artifacts that we were discussing earlier?
Yes, that's kind of like a quick selection area for you to look for certain things. There are other options that you can go deeper into.
Can you navigate to the Images tab?
Sure.
All right, so what is displayed here now that you've opened this tab?
So this would be just all of the images that were tagged by Detective Knox. It's now accumulating them into one area. So it allows me, as a user or an examiner, to be able to just quickly say, I only want to look at the images right now, and then I can scroll through. So I'm able to kind of scroll through these images as I feel fit, but again, knowing that they are tagged and filtered.
I'm sorry, may we approach quickly?
Yes.
I think it would have to be moved over here, Rich.
You have to move the computer over there. Yeah, that's come from that side.
Yeah. Or from the prosecutor.
From one of the tape. Here, no, there it goes. Now, if you guys need to stand and get closer, you're welcome.
Fix it.
Okay, and just to be abundantly clear, how did it come to be that these images were selected to be contained within this reader report that we're looking at here?
These are just basically what Detective Knox tagged as he was going through the physical analyzer tool. So it's just going to bring them all together in one holding area, regardless of date or time or anything. It's just the tagged items.
And so this is not all of the images that are contained on the full Celebrite reader report.
That's correct, yes.
Can you navigate down a few rows? All right, yeah, and then can you click on the picture on the far right, in the second row?
This one
Yes.
here? Okay.
Can you describe to me what that picture is of?
So this is kind of like I guess it is a photo, but if we look, there's the path, right? So as we mentioned, what is it that we want to find out where this came from? If we look to the right below the picture, it is a picture of Detective Benjamin Marconi. If we look in below, we'll see that there's a path called root data com.android.chrome. So that path gives me a clue when I'm looking at this information, saying, okay, that was derived or originated from the Chrome browser. If we look further, then we'll see that it's in the cache file. So there's cache/cache, another file, and then this individual picture. So that would indicate that this is simply a cached image from some website that was displayed in Google Chrome on the device.
And so again, we've discussed earlier images that are contained within the cache. Simply based on the existence of this photo and the file path in the cache, you cannot say that this photo is ever actually displayed on the screen of the phone?
Yes, we would not know that without some other type of corroborating evidence.
Okay. Can you click on the image, so we'll say just to the left of it? What is this an image of?
This is an image of a handgun.
And looking at the file path, do you have a clue as to where this photo is located?
Certainly. Well, similar to the one that we just looked at, it is in the same path. So you'll notice com.android.chrome, cache, and then a file folder and a file name, default.jpg. So just like the other one, it's a cached image that would have come from a website or some type of viewing through the Chrome browser. Now, viewing may not be the right word, but it's the Chrome browser was actively loading that page.
And so again, similarly with the last photo, just simply based on the fact that this photo exists in the cache, you cannot say that the user was aware of this photo.
I cannot.
I do for a moment want to discuss the order of images that these images are appearing in. So that image that we just selected of Officer Marconi, we can see here is essentially flanked by numerous images of guns. You see that?
I do, yes.
How are these images ordered in this filtered tag report?
So the default, what they call the icon view or thumbnail view within Celebrate Reader is that it's just in name order. So whatever the name of the file would be when it was stored on the computer, Celebrate's going to put it in that order. And currently, we're not displaying that, but that's an option that could be turned on.
Can you turn that on?
Sure. So up above, we'll see there's what's called actions, and it gives me the option as the examiners to hide the file names and show the file names. And that's basically just to give you more real estate if you're not interested in looking at the names. But by clicking show, we could clearly see the thumbnails shrink a little bit, but then we now have the file name below each thumbnail. And you can clearly, by looking at the top, you'll notice that these start with the number 1, okay? And then as they progress, they go through the numerics and then they get into alphanumerics, you know, the A's, the D's, the I's, M's, and so forth.
All right, and so to be clear, those photos are not put next to each other because that is the order in which they appeared on the cell phone.
That's correct.
They are not in that order because the user had put them in that order.
Correct.
In fact, they're only next to each other in this filter report likely because Detective Knox selected them to be filtered out of the full phone.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
I can rephrase that.
You can rephrase.
So, as we were discussing before, these images are selected out of the full reader report by an operator of the full reader report, correct?
Correct, so they're tagged, and then that report was created to just extract the tagged items.
And so the only reason that these photos here are condensed together is because they were selected to be filtered out of the full reader report.
That is correct, yes.
So there's a search bar in the corner there that says, I guess, yeah, can you see the search bar in the upper right corner of the photo tab?
Up here, yes, sir.
So we talked about how cache being in the file path would be indicative of a photo that's located within the cache of the phone. What does this search bar function allow you to do?
So Celebrate likes to call it search, but in reality it's a filter. And so what it allows me as an examiner is I can look for keywords or filter to a specific keyword. So if I'm aware that I want to see all files that are in cache or all files that are in a specific folder, I could quickly query that or put that name in, and the system will automatically filter to just viewing those items.
So can you filter for photos that are located in the cache?
So by typing in just simply the word cache, you'll notice that it automatically then filters down. Now, what we can see, if you look down below, the tab itself says 116, so that's indicating the total number that is in this report. However, if we look down below, and if you can see my cursor down here, by like the second picture from the right on the bottom, it indicates that there's 49 items / 116. That's just telling me as an examiner that I've just filtered that 116 items down to 49 based on that term.
And just looking at the photos that are left over, what are these images of generally?
Guns.
Okay. And again, based only on the file pathways of these photos indicating that that these photos are in the cache, you cannot say that these images were seen by the user of the phone.
No, not based on these images alone.
But you also cannot say that these images were displayed on the phone screen at any point.
Correct.
You cannot say that the user's, the phone's user was even aware of the existence of these images.
Correct. Now, without other cooperating evidence.
It would be false to say that these images were downloaded by the user.
That is correct.
It would be false to say that these images were saved by the user.
Objection, Your Honor. Let's say mischaracterizations of the evidence. I believe he testified to if there was no further cooperation.
You can rephrase it.
Again, so based on the file pathways indicating that these photos are in the cache, without any other corroborating evidence, you are not able to say that these photos were saved by the user.
That is correct.
it would be false to state on that basis that these images were gathered by the user of the phone.
That is correct.
The only reason that you can say these images exist on the phone based on the file pathways here is that they were put onto the phone by automatic processes of the phone out of control of the user of the phone.
Correct. So the cache is designed to be preemptive. So it basically wants to make the user experience better. So therefore, it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. The mere word cache is basically defined as items of a similar type in a hidden or inaccessible area. And in the form of computers, so the word cache has been around for years, started out with computers and it's just transferred over to the mobile phone as a collection of items, right? It could be photos, it could be documents, it could be anything. But it is basically for quick retrieval in the event the user wants to see that information. Okay.
In preparation for your testimony, did you have the opportunity to take a screenshot of this image filtering out the images in the cache?
I did, yes.
Okay. So can you clear the filter?
Certainly.
Can you pick on one of the, I'll say a selfie type image? Okay, so looking at the file path for this image, is there anything that indicates to you about the location of this image on the phone?
Certainly, and again, you'll hear this constantly whenever you're trying to understand an artifact, is you go to the source or the path. Again, looking under the actual picture, in the path, we see some different information. So this one exists under root media /0/DCIM/camera. So a couple of things that's telling me. 0 is just the user account on the phone. Media is just obviously a category that the phone characterizes this type of data. DCIM is basically digital camera imaging. And so that's a default known folder structure on both the digital cameras that you can hold in your hand, Kodaks and the Nikons and all of those, as well as on any type of digital device. And then with the word camera, that is clearly telling me that is the default location where a picture would be saved if it was taken with the camera on this phone.
And so just like we did with cache, are you able to filter for camera to determine which of these images in the filter report were from the camera of the phone?
I can. So as we know, if we have a common denominator, in this case, it could be DCIM, it could be camera, we can then filter by that by typing in camera. You will notice that it then filters as well. So by scrolling down, we now see that there are only 56 images out of 116 that are being displayed based on the filter camera.
And again, what sorts of images are displayed as being from the camera of the phone?
I'm seeing selfies and pictures of a license, it appears.
Do you see any images of guns?
I do not.
Do you see any images of the crime scene in this case?
I do not.
Do you see any images that appear to be related to the offense in this case?
I do not.
What file path would you expect to see for an image that has been downloaded by the user to a phone?
So a physical download of an item, say you're on the internet, it could be a picture, it could be a document. I'm sure people have done it. With smartphones, you can kind of hold your finger on that item, and by pressing on it, you'll get a pop-up or some type of option that asks you to save it. The default location for anything like that would be in a folder called Downloads under the user's profile on the phone.
Okay. And just before I move on, in preparation for your testimony, did you have a chance to take a screenshot of this filter for images from the camera?
I did, yes.
Okay. So why don't you filter now for images that would be in the downloads of the phone?
So we know the name of the default folder, and as we mentioned, Celebrate would then still, even if it was in the download folder, would still show up in the photos area. By putting in download, we now notice that there are 0 of 116. So that indicates that there were absolutely no pictures that were saved in the downloaded folder on this device.
And that's, so to be clear, none of the images on the filtered reader report, on the tagged items report, were located in the download of the cell phone.
That is correct.
All right, so based on my math, right, we found that 49 are in the cache, 56 are in the camera. I think that leaves 11 images left over that we haven't accounted for, right?
Yes, based on the 116, correct.
Are you able to filter for those 11 images?
I can. So that was using a tag. We can identify the leftover 11 images. These would be the items that would not be filtered or part of the filter of camera and or cache.
And also not of download?
Of downloads as well, correct.
Okay. So why don't you, I guess, did you have a chance prior to your testimony to take a screenshot of these 11 remaining images here?
I have, yes.
Could you start by clicking the first image in the second row? What does that image appear to be of?
So by looking at this image, it looks like it's coming from some type of social media, right? So it's a post on something that is displaying this, and it was either a screen capture or something forward. As we spoke before, I immediately go to the path to try to determine where this image would have originated from. And if we look on this one, there's some additional clues. We see that it's still under root data, but now we're seeing com.android.providers.telephony. Okay? So part of my training, I need to understand what that folder entails. That would be the area where if somebody was sending an instant message or a text message, that it would store the attachments, right? So if I sent you a picture on this Android, it would have put that picture in the telephony. And you'll also notice that it even creates a folder called app parts. And it's just mainly adding that to this file name so that we can indicate that it's still part of that text message and it's one part of the text message.
And so are you able to navigate to that text message to verify that that is in fact where this photo came from?
Absolutely. So one of the nice features of having the tools like this versus like a PDF is we'll notice there's the little icons down here. So we see a paper clip, and if I hover over it, that's telling me that Celebrate is identified that as an attachment. If I go to the right of that, it'll also give me a clue that it was received. So I know whether this image was received from this phone or by this phone or sent from the phone. So right away we know it's an attachment that was received. By right-clicking on it, I get the option to go to the instant message. So it will automatically take me right over to that message, and you'll see it kind of highlights this one part, but I have to scroll down a little bit. That right there is the same image that was in the photos area, the pictures area, and that was attached to an incoming message.
And so can you confidently say then that that remaining image on the phone was sent to the phone?
Correct, and it even has the user named George, so it's pulling that name out of the artifacts of that text message.
Is there anything here that indicates to you that the user did anything to save this image?
No.
Just wanted to take a closer look here.
Certainly. You want to look at it here? Yes, so the last, so this is going, and if you can hear it, I'll make sure. Is that okay if I explain things?
I mean, that's kind of the purpose of cross-examination, right?
All right.
Okay, so if you could navigate back to the 11 remaining images we have on the images tab.
Certainly.
Can you click on the image furthest to the right?
Yes.
What does this image appear to be?
So this is what they consider temporary, what they call task thumbnails. So why is it called a task number? Every application that's running on your phone has its own unique task ID. So that allows the phone to know, okay, these items are associated with this task. So if you had your social media page up, it would have a task number associated with it, and any artifacts that that task or that social media app would do would be connected to that task number. If you have multiple programs, each one has a different task. What happens, as I explained, the background routine. If we've ever looked at our phone and we've kind of swiped up, and then you see all these little miniature thumbnails that we can flip through, they're almost like a still screenshot of what that app looked like prior to moving to the background. So what this task image is, or this thumbnail, is merely stating that a Google search bar, which is basically like a quick search bar part of the Android phone, was utilized, and then it went to the background. And at the time that it went to the background, the program or the phone would automatically create that image so that it could show the user to go back to it if they want. So when they're flipping through, they're like, oh yes, if I need to, I can go back to that task.
And so this thumbnail is indicative that this image was actually displayed on the screen of the phone at the point when the user navigated away from this image?
That is correct, yes.
And so then, in that search bar, can you draw a conclusion about what the user did or did not type based on what is in that search bar at the time it's navigating away?
I can, yes.
And what's your conclusion?
So based on this image, as we know, this was created when the task would have went to the back, or this actual event. We can see a couple of clues to this. Up at the top, we see www.ksat.com. So that is the indication of what data was typed into the search bar. Now below that though, like in standard Google fashion, anytime you try to type something into Google, it's going to immediately start suggesting things, right? So that's Google's algorithm. They want to try to give you where you want to go. And I mean, if we've all noticed, Google will even try to correct your spelling. They'll try to do everything and say, I think this is what you're looking for. So by just typing ksat.com, that suggestion, or these different suggestions would pop up to allow the user, if they wanted to go to those websites.
And so, to be clear, you can confidently say here that the user did not type officer shot into the search bar here.
Absolutely, yes.
You can confidently say that the user did not type murder or anything of that nature.
That is correct.
The only conclusion you can draw is that ksat.com was typed in.
That is correct.
And you can see that there are a few drop-down links like you suggested. What are those drop-down links?
So the first one that pops up is a suspect in Iowa officer deaths. Has history of racial provocations. The second one is one of two Pennsylvania police officers shot, has died, coroner says. After that, gunman who shot at SAPD headquarters sought. And then Dallas police chief defends use of robot to kill shooting suspect.
And then up above there, what does it indicate those drop-downs are showing?
Basically, it's headlines, right? So Google is saying, you're looking for a news, website. So Google is well aware of what KSAT does because it caches everything, it goes through, and has to have it in its search index. So because of that, the first clue that Google's algorithm would say is, you're looking at news. I'm assuming you want to see current news. So I'm going to give you a list of current news. What is current on this website? I will also give you relevant current information about it.
And if then the user clicked one of these drop-downs and navigated away, the web page that loaded after clicking that link would begin caching the images on that news article.
That is correct.
And it would begin doing that without any of those images actually being displayed on the screen so that the user could see them.
Well, it would, by clicking on it, it would then change the focus, right? So when the web browser would come to the front, and it would create this thumbnail and go to the back. But it's still caching all of the items on there, regardless of what is being displayed or how much is being displayed.
Okay. All right. I want to
Judge, just very briefly, just to explain kind of what we're doing here, because we don't have the screen here in front of us. We are availing ourselves of the permission the court gave us to take a look at the screens a little bit closer, but we're not trying to be disruptive with this portion.
Okay, that's understood.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
And before we navigate away from this, what is the timestamp on this thumbnail?
So the date and timestamp, it has two different timestamps. The first one is created 11/20/2016, and it's at 16:06:19 p.m. And it's only showing as 16 because of the settings on my machine. I have it in military time. So that would indicate that it's 4:06 p.m.
Okay, are you able to navigate away from the images now to the searched items section of this tagged items report?
I can, yes. So there would be another indication here, and you'll see it says searched items. That would allow me to then go into that category through the reader.
Can you order those so that they're in ascending fashion?
Oh, sorry. There you go.
Okay, and can you scroll to item number 34?
There you go.
All right, and what is this item?
So this would indicate a Google search. So we have some clues that we're looking at. Under the source column, as you see over here on the right, they're all saying Chrome. So basically, that's telling us which program would have created this artifact, and that the Celebrate tool associates it with. That now is, if you look to the right, it is in the searched items category because of the structure. So when you do a search on Google, it is going to always give you the same beginning of what's called the URL. So a URL is considered a universal resource locator, the equivalent of a web page, right? So URL means the www dot whatever web page. In this case, if we look down in that URL, it'll say www.google.com/search question. So that is what's called the Google search query. That's their query language that says whatever's after this, I will give you the results. So this is an indication of those specific words: round, space, rock, space, sports, space, center. But in this case, it comes up and you're like, all right, is that a search? So it looks like a search. Then there's round, rock, sports after that, but if we look, they're the exact same time. Okay, so we can't assume things until we know all of the artifacts. So because both of these artifacts are at the same time, the search would most likely, if we take a look at this, because we see the other artifacts after it that just say Round Rock Sports Center, that would be the search and the other would be a suggestion, right? So, as I mentioned, without corroborating evidence, just because Celebrate collects data and puts it in a searched items category, doesn't mean it's a type search from the user.
Okay, and so we discussed this a little bit with the images. I do want to just clarify here, right? So we see the search items in this tagged items report. There's the Round Rock Center gun show, then Round Rock Sports Center, going down all the way to how do you take apart Glock 40, right? And those are all really in sequence in this tagged items report, right?
That is correct, yes.
So again, these this list here that exists here is selected by, in this case, Detective Knox, to be pulled out of the larger set of artifacts in the full download to be displayed in this tagged items report.
That is correct.
And so it could be the case that there are additional artifacts surrounding these artifacts that give them more context.
Correct.
And does that additional context allow you to determine what might have been actually being done by the user of the phone at the time these artifacts were created?
Yes, that's true, and especially on a filtered report, if there's any artifacts missing between there, I cannot come to any conclusion to any of these artifacts other than identifying them at this point. So I would need more information.
And we'll put a pin in that and we'll come back to this later. But just for starters, even between the last Round Rock Sports Center's searched item and how do you take apart a Glock 40, looking at the timestamps, how much time is between those two artifacts?
It's close to 2 months.
Okay, so we're now on number 40, right?
I can go to that? Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are, again, about 13 different artifacts, if I'm counting correctly, for how do you take apart a Glock 40 that are here.
Correct.
Looking at the timestamps, what is the time difference between the first artifact and the last artifact?
For about 15 seconds total between the first and the last.
Can you explain a little bit how it could be the case that there are 13 searched items for the same thing over the time span of 15 seconds?
I can, yes. So we have to kind of put it in perspective of this is a forensics tool, right? So the forensics tool is just going to look inside of a database and say, this line item has the same search URL, and I'm going to just mount them and actually show you this list. Now what happens though, if you're doing a search in Google, and I'm sure people have seen it before, you can search something and leave the page there. What is Google doing? You'll see it'll just keep searching more and more and more, right? And as you scroll, it can search more. It's caching, or it's looking for these items. This would not indicate a person typing this multiple times. I mean, one, it would be extremely difficult within 12 seconds to do so. It's more likely that the page is just refreshing. So therefore, the refresh would force the Internet History database to take another snapshot of that and store it.
And so again, this doesn't indicate that the user searched how do you take apart a Glock 40 13 individual times.
Correct.
It does not indicate how important this particular search was to the user that searched it.
Correct.
Does this indicate anything to you besides simply the background processes of a browser that are out of control of the user?
Correct.
It does not.
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah, I'll re-ask that question. This does not indicate anything to you besides the background processes of a browser that are out of control of the user.
Yes, nothing indicates that a person is typing this multiple times.
Okay, can you navigate to the web history tab now?
Sure.
And again, search by assignment, please.
Certainly.
Can you go to artifact 17? All right, and so again, this is a web history artifact for how do you take apart a Glock 40?
Yes, sir.
And you can see again, right, there are a number of artifacts from this same search result.
That is correct.
Is this what you would expect with the refreshing of the page like we discussed in the search items artifact?
Yes, it would.
So if we go down to the first artifact that's not one of these, it looks like it's a YouTube artifact. And there are what looks like 3 identical web history artifacts for a link to YouTube.
Correct. Hyphen or YouTube. That means that the page title changed on the browser. If you also look to the right, the URL also did change. So that would be a clear indication that from that search, also have internet. If we look, because of that, it's in blue, right? So the blue is indicated as a live link. So we're able to actually, through the forensics tool, just simply click on this. If we notice in the background, if you can see, my browser came up, but it didn't take focus, right? It's still in the background. The browser is actually now, it went out, opened that web page. I haven't seen anything yet. Again, this is a computer, but the phones are similar. By bringing that up, we now see the actual URL that was clicked on.
And about how long is this video?
It's roughly 5 minutes and 3 seconds.
And so you can see here that there are thumbnails of other videos that are displayed and continue to be displayed down the end of the web page.
Correct. And as you can see, they just keep refreshing and scrolling and refreshing. So that in the background is basically preempting, assuming that the user is going to look for more.
And the app, obviously on a computer in this case, but on a cell phone, the phone would be caching the images of those thumbnails even prior to them being displayed on the screen.
Jackson, here.
What would the phone be doing with regards to these thumbnails?
Well, similar to as I'm displaying on the computer, even though this is a computer and that was a phone, they're both Chrome, right? So really the caching hasn't anything to do with the device. The caching has to do with the browser. The browser is what's doing this. So it is going to then start preemptively downloading items that the user may go into. Especially with YouTube, I don't know if people have noticed that if you leave a YouTube running and click on that one YouTube and then don't stop it, it'll continue on to another YouTube and continue on to another YouTube. So it like auto plays things based on this list. So it is preemptively bringing and downloading that data to get ready to play the next video.
And so navigating back to the tagged items report, looking at the timestamp of these 3 artifacts, is there anything that you can, does that indicate anything to you about the user activity on the phone regarding this video?
Yes, so if we take a look, and again, this is a filtered one, so I don't have all of the artifacts possibly between these, but based on this, we see 3 Glock disassemblies. And again, they'll repeat themselves based on refreshing. As you noticed as I was going through, was refreshing the page. You'll notice there's about a 5-minute, a little bit less than a 5-minute gap that indicates this YouTube being at the beginning and then last accessed, and then it immediately goes to just YouTube. So that would be an indication that it went back to YouTube and it has a different URL. So if we notice up top here, it'll have another URL here that is indicating where the YouTube went after that video.
Okay. Now, can we navigate to artifact 36?
Yes, sir.
What artifact is this?
So this was the ksat.com website. So you can see the actual URL that was displayed here, as well as up top. That's the officer shot, killed outside SAPT headquarters identified.
And so, again, there are 4 identical artifacts for this web page. Can you tell us anything about how that may have occurred?
So these artifacts will build basically on a dynamic page, right? And in the case of something like a news article, if a new item was added to it, it would refresh. If a video is playing, because sometimes they'll have these videos that kind of keep scrolling. As they play, it refreshes. So these artifacts are basically saying first visit, last visit, now it's not up on the screen anymore. So we can kind of see the difference between the last visit versus the first visit. And the items in between are just more or less caching in the entries in the database.
And so again, that's consistent with a web page refreshing and caching additional images, a process that's out of control of the user.
It is, yes.
Okay, I would like you to navigate back to the camera section and pull up the filter for the cache images again.
Okay, let me go back to images. I will remove this filter.
names for many of these images of guns. What can you see in the file names for these images?
Well, again, just like the path, the file names also give us clues as to where they may have originated from. And some of the items, as we look, they're called default. You'll see images. There's a number of the guns. It's images, 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 images. So they're all the same name. Right? So that would be some type of consistent automatic caching. If we look down as well, we'll start seeing MQ default and HQ default. So there's a couple of those. Most of these are MQ default that relates to the guns. So that's a clue for me to understand the possible source of these tagged images.
And are you familiar with some testimony at trial that many of these images did not have dates associated with them?
I am, yes.
In your opinion, is that testimony correct?
It is not.
And why not?
Well, it's partially, let me reframe. The image itself would not have a date, as it's a cached image. But I want to explain a little bit. These are considered embedded cached images. And so what does that mean on a phone? Well, if a file is actually downloaded, say saved somewhere, I take a picture and I put it in my downloads directory, it's saving that as an actual JPEG picture with a name that I can see and the actual file dates, because it has to have those file dates to be saved. However, a embedded cached image is an image inside of another file. When I train on these, when I do my lectures, I explain to people, let's say you opened up a Word document and you created that Word document on January 1st. And you put some text in there and then you saved it, but then you went back and you opened up that document February 1st, and you dragged a picture and you pasted it inside of the Word document and closed it. Well, what you did by dragging that image inside of the Word document is you stripped the metadata from that picture. It no longer has dates, times, or anything else. It is now embedded as part of the Word document. So even though that picture doesn't have any text, or that would give us dates and times or anything, or metadata, the container does. So the Word document, we would see, oh, it was created in January, last modified in February. That picture would have had to have been added to that Word document between those two dates and times. So that's how we can come to a conclusion on when this cache image arrived, not by the image itself, but by the container that's holding that image.
And were you able to look at the containers of some of these images to determine when they had actually appeared on the phone?
I was, yes.
So I won't take you ad nauseum through the process of going through all, I can't remember what it is, 46, 48 of these images. Relative to the images of guns that are displayed on the screen, was there a universal date that all of them shared?
Yes.
What was that date?
It was the 11/12/2016, and it was, the timestamp was right at the time of the search for the Glock.
And so based on that, can you confidently say what the source of these cached images was?
Yes. Because all of those cached images arrived right after that search and the page displaying or loading, all of these images would have been associated with that search term.
And so all of these images were produced by that singular search by the user on the phone?
Well, I'll say not all of these. If you notice, there's the gun ones here, right? So this search here on their cache contains guns, and it also contains some images of the article from KSAT. So those have a different date stamp on them.
Okay, yeah, sorry, so that, I apologize. So for the images of guns, all of those were caused by that singular search by the user of the phone?
That is correct.
Okay. And now let's talk about those remaining images that are not of guns, that are of the scene and the car and the badge in the corner. Were you able to do that same process of determining a date for those images?
Yes. So similar to the other images, I was able to locate the container and find the actual date stamps that were part of that container. That would indicate when that file was created. And they were only within seconds of each other, indicating that these were on 11/20/2016.
are you able to say what the source of these images was?
Absolutely. So not only the date, the time was right after the Google search bar of ksat.com, and then that webpage opening, the ksat.com webpage that was showing the information on the officer being shot. These images are all related, including at that same time or after.
And again, the caching of the gun images after the Google search and caching of the other images after visiting that website, that is not something that is within the control of the user.
Correct.
And again, all of these images that are contained here on the screen were the ones that were filtered out of the full cell phone reader report by Detective Justin Knox.
That is correct.
And your understanding is that these were the images that were relied upon by the state of trial.
Correct.
Okay, so we have talked at length about the filtering of this and how this might leave out some relevant information. So I want you now to pull up the actual full reader report that is not filtered by Detective Justin Knox.
Okay, this will give me a couple of minutes. I will need to pull up this report. Okay, I'm ready.
And just to be abundantly clear, can you explain how this report that you pulled up differs from the tagged items report that we were just working with?
Sure. Right off the bat, we notice it actually looks a little different. Right? The other report had different color selections for the boxes and did not have what's called the file structure tree on the left. They're both Celebrite reader reports. However, this was an older version of Celebrite that would have been created in 2020 area when this report was done versus the other one in 2021. And I think it may have even been further back. No, it's 2020, yes. So what's different though is you'll notice on the right, we still have the boxes, they're just a different color, but there's a lot more data in there, right? So more data means that it was still created by the physical analyzer tool. However, this one does not have any tags in it. So therefore, it was a report that was generated by the physical analyzer to attempt to get a full Celebrate reader report.
Okay, are you able to navigate to the timeline function?
I can.
Can you explain what the timeline function is?
Correct. So the timeline function is a kind of a collection of all of the artifacts that have dates and timestamps that it could put in data work. So it's giving you a step-by-step process of the phone rather than just looking at pictures only or looking at text messages only. You see everything happening in order of creation of the phone. So as the phone is being used, it creates this timeline. So if I double click on this timeline, we'll see that it has 17,104 items in it. What I do always when I'm dealing with the timeline is I need to make sure I bring up the options in to ensure that they're all selected. Because Celebrite even has a way of filtering the timeline, it can limit what's being shown. So I validate that I'm seeing everything from the timeline through the screen, and now I'm able to basically look through all of the artifacts that fall into this timeline category.
Okay, so we discussed a while earlier, I just want to reference back the Round Rock Sports Center gun show search and how that may be missing some artifacts that provide context. Can you now navigate to that search in the
Sure.
timeline function?
So like the table search that we had before, I could put in the words Round Rock and give it a moment, and you'll see it'll start filtering down to just those items. And similar to the photos, you see I'm seeing 19 items out of 17,104. But it'll start me out at the first item that it's seeing in date order, and that's where we see the Round Rock Sports Center gun show at the top.
And now with more context, not filtered out by the action of Detective Knox, looking prior to this artifact, what sorts of artifacts do you see on the phone?
Okay. So how I get to that point is once I've done my search, now I can actually clear my search. So I first highlight the item I want, which is you see in blue. Then I clear the search. And what the program will do is then say, okay, Jerry, you want to see the rest of the stuff around this artifact. So by doing so, now I start seeing what happened prior to that artifact. And let me see if I can make this a little bit better to see. And then we can take a look at those items.
And so what sorts of artifacts do you see prior to the searched item Round Rock Sports Center gun show?
Well, if we see that, we go up a little bit further, right? So that one is at 11:26:57 seconds. The other web history one is 11:22:10 seconds, and that's Austin Spurs to hold the local player tryouts in September 24th.
Do you see prior to that searched items and web history related to searching for the Austin Spurs trial?
Yes, so there's two different artifacts. If you'll notice, there's web history and then there's searched items, right? They're both in the same database on the phone for the holding area. However, if we put this in date order, which we have, we can start seeing a couple of items here, AUST and then Austin Spurs tryouts.
And so, if, just one moment. So, Mr. Grant, does the fact that a search item artifact exists on a phone mean that the user intentionally searched that particular item?
It does not.
All right, and why might it not? How can it be how could it happen that it would unintentionally create a search item artifact on a phone?
So I'll explain how Celebrate again is pulling these artifacts, right? If we take a look at this one that I'm highlighting right now, it's got AUST. So AUST would be more indicative of a person to start typing Austin, right? So you get to AUST. If you ever notice, if you pause in any way, Google immediately says, oh, I think this is what you're looking for, right? So it'll start giving you these suggestions. Those suggestions are actual Google searches. So they have the same URL that is if you type that in all by yourself. So by starting typing a word and you choose something from the drop-down, it will then take you over to that search term. However, if you don't click on it, the software, Google Chrome, is still recording that suggestion in the database as a possible link.
And what sorts of artifacts would you expect to see if someone was searching a term and following the links associated with that search?
Well, as you noticed when we were looking at the YouTube guide, whenever you're trying to follow what happened after a search, you look for the unique URLs that are different. So if you type in that search and then click on it, it would take you to that page that the search results were given to you for, and it would then change the URL. So you would end up on the Austin Spurs website if you were following that link. So the internet history is actually recording those clicks, but it's also recording suggestions and other things that the forensics tool is basically saying, I found all this data, you, Mr. Investigator, have to figure out what's relevant or not.
And Mr. Grant, in this string of artifacts, do you see any web history for actually visiting websites related to gun shows?
No, I do not.
And obviously, we do see web history related to visiting a link for Spurs trials in the city of Boston.
Let me see. We've got Austin, right? Austin Spurs, the whole local player, Round Rock. There's the gun show, right? But then Round Rock Sports, Round Rock Sports Center, gun show again, Austin Spurs, the whole local player tryouts. And as you notice, those are the ones that are followed. Right? So that's what we look for showing where the browser went next.
And similarly to the way we did with the YouTube link, are you able to follow the link to this page for the Spurs holding the trials in Austin?
Yes. So if we look at this, even if we start out from the AUST, right? So that search is typed into Google. It starts populating or guessing what it thinks you want to do, which is going to populate search URLs. But then we see that when you want to look at the actual change of the web browser, we need to look for that URL change. So by going to this first one here, that is at 11:27 a.m., we see that the URL at the top changed to Austin, dlleague.nba.com. That is clearly an indication that from those searches, that is what was clicked.
Are you able to pull up that webpage like you did with the YouTube?
I can. Let's see if it's still clicked. So that now is bringing it up on my web browser in the back. And I've done this before, unfortunately, it just loads. So that is an indication that even though that URL is trying to find it, there is no content. So it's either secured on the site or they've removed the data from that site.
Is there a way for you to determine what the URL looked like in the past?
Yes.
Can you do that for us?
Sure. So this is used often in my work. Let me kind of see what I'm doing. What I'm doing here is I'm selecting that URL that it's trying to find. Right? So I selected and copied that. The reason why I'm doing so, and I can stop that, is I can bring up another page. There is a website, it's one of many, it's called the Wayback Machine. So it's considered the Internet Archive. So how does the Wayback Machine work? And I'll type that in, put in Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine is an archive, it tries to archive the internet. So it has these programs that scour the internet. So they call them bots, B-O-T-S. So these bots, their job is to go, oop, that website just changed. Okay? I'm gonna take a snapshot of it and I'm gonna store it back in the Internet Archive. Now, the Wayback Machine doesn't capture everything, right? It would just be enormous to capture all of the data. However, specific ones, when it sees change or the bot is active, it can record that in its database. So that allows me as an investigator to go to that Wayback Machine and put that URL in that I'm looking for, and it will say, I have historical snapshots on these particular pages. So would you like me to continue with that?
Yes.
So by going to the Wayback Machine, we'll see it's, right away we see it popping up these little icons, and that's caching items on my machine. But it's got a spot for this URL. So by pasting that URL that is not loading into the Wayback Machine, it will go out and give me a timeline. And the timeline says, Jerry, I have the following artifacts. And if we notice, it's pretty clear to see because it gives you that black line indicating that somewhere towards the end of 2016, there are some artifacts. So by clicking on that link, it then populates below and gives me an indication of what it has. So in the Internet Archive, you'll see that as of August 9th, that's in green, September 11th is in green, October 13th and 14th. That's an indication visually of what snapshots the Wayback Machine has of that Spurs website.
And I believe that the search or the visit to this webpage was on September 15th, so can you navigate to the September 11th webpage?
So if I click on it, you'll see that's like a hot link, right? So it tells me that, and it even tells you the time that it did the snapshot. So by bringing that up, you're seeing a cached version, right? So if we take a look, we're still back here not getting into the real site, but this will now say, this is what I saw back on this date, and I memorialized it.
And in this website, where does it say that the Austin Spurs are going to be holding their player tryouts?
So if we look, the Austin tryouts, it's like in the third paragraph, will be held at the Round Rock Sports Center, 2400 Chisholm, I think that's how it's pronounced, Trail, Round Rock, Texas.
Prior to testimony today, did you have a chance to take a screenshot of this page of the Wayback Machine?
I did, yes.
We can navigate back to the read report, please.
Certainly.
And again, so we see after the visit to that webpage saying that Austin Spurs are holding tryouts at the Round Rock Sports Center. That's when we start seeing the searches for the Round Rock Sports Center.
Correct.
I just have one more thing I'd like you to do for us, Mr. Grant.
Sure.
Are you able to pull up States Exhibit 381? Is it your understanding that this was an exhibit admitted by the state at the penalty phase of Mr. McKane's trial?
Yes, I do understand that.
All right, so we talked a lot about clues about locations of images. Looking at the file path here, are there any clues about where this image might be located?
As we've discussed before, I immediately try to look at the source file, right? So we have the name of the file, we have the source file, and we have a different clue. So here we see, instead of Chrome cache, we see com.mobileposse.client/cache. So indicating that it's still a cache file, so it's the same process of preemptively loading and preparing temporary files for access. However, it's a different application. So that gave me the source, or what that unique string is, that allows me to try to determine what application was used or on the phone in any way that could have caused these pictures to be downloaded.
And so again, this is a cache file. So just like with the other cache files, you cannot say that this photo was ever actually displayed on the screen of the phone.
You cannot know.
You cannot say that it was ever actually seen by the user of the phone.
Correct.
You cannot say that the user of the phone was ever aware of this image's existence on this alone.
Correct.
It would be false to say that this image was the result of a Google search.
Correct.
So I believe you already talked a little bit about the Mobile Posse app. Were you able to do any other investigations regarding the Mobile Posse app?
I was, yes.
Can you talk about that?
Certainly. So, because I had access to the more complete Celebrate Reader report, the first thing I would do is, like I would do in any other case, is I take that clue, right? So sometimes instead of typing it, I will copy it. So I'm taking it right from the original exhibit, and what I'm doing now is, like I did with the other pictures, is I'm just going to filter. So right now at this point, all I know is that string that says Mobile Posse. I have no idea what that may be. By pasting that in, you start getting, let me get the Mobile Posse completely, right? We start now seeing filter based on the Mobile Posse search term, basically filter term. Right away at the top, we notice under the type of artifact, which would be the category that Celebrate puts in, it's called installed applications. So I immediately know by this search, if I look to the right, that a application called Metro Zone is associated with that path com.mobileposse.client. So this was not a web page or a Chrome search or anything. It's an application. And so I can see that this application was installed basically on this phone, what they call a purchase date, back on 8/15/2015.
And so what does that indicate about how the application found its way onto the phone?
Well, what I did is I took that 8/15/2015 date and I filtered on that. That then brought up a whole series of applications and setup of the phone. It's some of the earliest items that were put on this device. So based on my review of that, it's an indication that this is a default application that was on the phone as it's purchased. So this was particularly a Metro PCS cell phone. So that was the provider, Metro PCS. So the Metro Zone was a default app that was part of that Metro PCS installation.
So the user of the phone did not make the decision to install this app on the phone?
No, it was a batched install with that and other apps.
Are you able to determine what the other behavior of this app might have been around the time that this image was cached on the phone?
Yes, so what I need to do, if we're looking at that, is we have to get some clues from the image. What we do know about this image, or both of these images, is they're all the same exact date and timestamp. So there's my indication of where I need to kind of filter things down. So I can look at 11/13/2016 as a clue. And so just like putting in Mobile Posse, I already have that in there, I can go to the timestamp and I can actually bring that back to 2016, right? And I want 11/13/2016. I apologize, I needed to go back. So I can do November 13. Is it 13 or 16? I just want to make sure.
I think 13.
13, my apologies. 11. Can we go back to 2016 again? And we got November 13th. So what I'm telling the Celebrate tool is not only filter on Mobile Posse, also filter on that date. Right? So that gives me two filters or multiple filters, which start bringing it down to what was Mobile Posse app doing on this date. And we start seeing a whole series of items. Now, if we look, there's nothing else associated with that mobileposse.com directory other than images. Every one of these images, if we start taking a look at them and go down the line, are in the cache. So all this indicates is that the app is doing something in downloading or caching images. So it could be in the background, it could be doing it automatically, as we discussed before. It is just downloading these actual images. What I did is I looked at the time, the 4:58:51, and that would be in military time, 16:58:51 takes me right to this image. So now I see the two images. What's unique is you'll start seeing that all of these images are grouped together. So it's like a batch download. So periodically, this Mobile Posse app is just reaching out, grabbing relevant news articles, right? And now when I mean relevant, whatever was in the news at that time.
And about how many images did it download in this batch of images across what period of time?
So this was a total of 9 images that were downloaded within that batch time, starting at 4:58:50 seconds and ending at 4:58:52 seconds. So it's just a quick 2-second time span.
What sorts of artifacts would you expect to see on the phone if the Mobile Posse app had been opened?
Well, what you would see more is because that com.mobile Posse link, that actual path, there would be more activity. There'd be database updates, there'd be log files that get created, that the app is actually in focus, things like that would happen. So you'd see other artifacts in that Mobile Posse directory related to this app. This does not show anything other than the caching images.
And what does that indicate to you?
That it's just basically running in the background would be
And when, to be clear, when you say running in the background, what do you mean?
Well, it's an installed app, right? So the app is designed to just be installed to the user from the beginning. So the user may not even know it's on there. It would then configured from setup, and without even using the app could be doing something that was programmed from T-Mobile.
And you don't see any
PCF.
indication,
Yes, sir.
you don't see any indication in the artifacts that this app was actually accessed by the user around the time this image was cached?
I do not know.
And so, just to be clear, your conclusion regarding State's Exhibit 381, admitted at Mr. McKane's penalty phase trial, is that it was the result of an automatically downloaded, the automatic processes of an automatically downloaded app on the
Objection
defendant's
made.
phone?
Objection made.
Sustained, you can rephrase.
So if you had to encapsulate your opinions regarding State's Exhibit 381, admitted at penalty phase of Mr. McKane's trial, how would you describe the source of that image?
So as always, I look at multiple artifacts, right, and pieces of information. The fact that it was all encapsulated in a group 2-second download, that's an indication of an automatic process, some type of thing. The fact that it's in the cache is an indication that it's just preemptively grabbing data. The fact that there's no other artifacts indicating that the Metro zone app was running is indicating that it's just an automatic process. And then looking at internet history, looking at Chrome, looking at all those, we do not see anything around this time that would indicate that there were any searches that would bring this picture up, other than it happened to be in the news at the same time as these other articles. So if we look, there's an article of somebody in a restaurant or cooking, right? There's sports, there's the the officer, there's somebody playing golf, there's Pfizer, right? And again, it's just nothing more than what's in the news. And so that's what we're seeing here.
And you don't see anything to indicate, again, that the user of the phone actually accessed any of these news articles, let alone State's Exhibit 381?
Correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
All right, so Mr. Grant, we discussed throughout your testimony that you had the opportunity to take some screenshots of your analysis today. Could you describe to me what is, I've handed you applicant's exhibit number 130. Could you describe to me what is on the first page of that exhibit?
Correct. So page 1 is basically a printed version of the screenshot that I did after putting in the filter for the downloads.
And what is on page 2?
Page 2 would be the Wayback Machine cached version of the Austin Spurs local player tryouts.
And what is page 3?
Page 3 would be the filtered version when I entered in the word cache to filter out those particular images.
What is page 4?
Page 4 would indicate the filtered results of me entering the camera search term.
And page 5?
And page 5 would indicate the 11 items that did not fall under all 3 of those, either downloads, cache, or under camera.
And do all those appear to be fair and accurate representations of the screenshots as you took them?
They do, yes.
Your Honor, petitioner moves applicant's exhibit 130 into evidence.
Your Honor, the only thing I would add is that, just to make the record clear, these are all from the tag report rather than the full report. But
Okay.
with no objection.
Understanding that, it's admitted.
Your Honor, I have no further questions. I'll pass the witness.
Go and take a short break.
Okay, we'll go ahead and
down, now you see how do you take apart a Glock. So these are kind of connected, right? If we go with the first one, how do you take apart a Glock 40, you immediately see Google search. So that's indicating that that was typed in to the bar, correct? And then if you look to the right, or in that URL section, you do see that where it says www.google.com/search ? So that is the structure of a Google search.
Okay, so you could confidently say that the person, somebody, put a Google search for that term in.
Yes, I can.
And you can confidently say that that page was focused onto the page, and that somebody visited it.
It brought up results, and then shortly after that, then YouTube was visited, which would indicate a click, which would then bring up the YouTube video.
Okay, and again, this is on November 12th, which would have been 8 days before the offense, is that correct?
Correct.
Prior to that, can we go to 9/15/2016?
Correct?
And these are related to the Round Rock searches, is that correct?
Yes, so these are the web history, but as we can see, the web history will also include the search structure.
Okay, and we talked about that a little bit earlier.
Mhm.
And what did
Yeah.
you determine the actual search was for?
Well, it started out prior to that when I went to the full screen where we were typing in like AUST, right, which brought up the Austin Spurs, which then brought up other suggestions. So Google would have done suggestions, which those suggestions would have had these URLs. So it would have been a suggested search. So that's what Google is saying, is if you click here, I'll research with these terms. So that started out with having Round Rock Sports Center Gun Show and Round Rock Sports Center being the Google searches. So that would indicate that that at least was a part of the suggested pop-downs.
So there was an actual search for the gun show, is that what your testimony is?
No, that is not my testimony.
Okay, I believe that's what you just said, so if you could
No,
just clarify.
no, I said there's an artifact. And this is what we have to be very careful when you're trying to interpret these things, which is what's important. Just because Celebrite pulls an artifact isn't 100% clear that a person typed that actual string of text letters in. So if a person types in Round Rock in this case, and Google then gives what's relevant at that date and time, and it says there's the Round Rock Spurs, or there's the Round Rock show, gun show, and other Round Rock sports centers, those are going to be just like that Google drop-down, they're suggestions. Celebrite treats those the same as a URL search because it has the same string. However, to determine if somebody's searching or actually seeking that out, you would then see that web page open up, right? So you would go to, as I demonstrated one with the YouTube, so that's clear, it was searched and they went to it. The other one, if it's just search and all you see is those search terms,